Mayor Bob Lanier's appointment, and you were in City Hall, and
I was the city attorney, and
That's
they told
right.
me, they said, look, we have this bright lawyer coming up here. We want her to head up the anti-gang task force, and she did a marvelous job.
you let me do a lot, Ben. You
Well,
gave me free reign, and he gave me a lot of leeway
Well,
as the anti-gang director.
I wish I could take credit for that, but really your talent made the way for you and your ability. She's also a former chief felony prosecutor. And was that here in Harris County?
It was.
And so I want you to know that she is clearly qualified to apply for this position. And so as voters, and I guess the election is this November,
It is November the 4th.
are there any other candidates who will be on the ballot for the Harris County District Attorney, or major candidates on the ballot for District Attorney, other than you and Devin Anderson?
No, it's just us. It's a simple choice.
Okay, so a simple choice between Kim Ogg and Devin Anderson. Now I want to talk with you, and I told you I'm going to be a little tough because I really want to know your thinking on some issues. One of the issues that has gotten the attention of the community is grand juries and how they're selected, how they're composed, and what they do. What's your understanding in terms of the appropriateness of how grand jurors are presently being selected?
The grand jury system needs to be changed from top to bottom. In Texas, in San Antonio, judges have voluntarily decided to pick grand jurors randomly, just like we pick regular jurors for juries. All of us get jury service notices, summons in the mail. We go. It's not easy. It takes away time from work, but we figure we're citizens and we owe our fellow citizens a jury of their peers.
And right now in Harris County, how are grand jurors chosen?
Grand juries are chosen in Harris County completely differently than that. They use what's called a key man system. It's antiquated, it's unfair, it produces gerrymandered results in many instances. And so the key man system allows judges in Harris County to pick commissioners, which we would consider like foremen, and those commissioners then nominate other people, usually their friends and acquaintances, to sit with them. So you don't really get a jury of the individuals who are being reviewed, their peers, you get a jury of the judges' peers.
And do you see the grand jury as an arm of the district attorney's office, or how do you view it? Because my view is it needs to be an independent body that's looking at some evidence that's being presented by the prosecutor and having an opportunity to ask for more evidence if necessary. It should be an independent body, not a body that's simply going to rubber stamp what the district attorney's office wants done. What's your view of that, of its function?
You know, the grand jury's assured to us in the Constitution. So it's actually supposed to be our right. The use of it, however, has become questioned by the results that we're seeing, especially by our African American community here in Houston, who's seeing results, for example, in police cases where you've got citizens who've been shot. We've seen over 200 results, all in favor of the police department. And the community's thoughts, I think, might be nobody's right every time.
You're talking about the no-billing, in other words, those police
That's
officers
right.
shooting a no-bill.
That's right. Now, the grand jury, is it an arm of the district attorney's office? In theory, it's not, but I'm telling you, in practice, it can be. And here's how. When a district attorney hears about a criminal case, the only job initially is to decide, is there probable cause to believe that a crime occurred? Not, are they guilty, not guilty, because you don't know all the evidence. So there's a manner of filing called direct filing, and our DA does that a lot. Remember the Sharpstown principal
Sure I do.
accused of not reporting sexual harassment or sexual
Oh, yeah.
incident? Okay, they arrested him on the spot, perp walked him out of his school. That's a direct file. Now, some people might say, in a case like that, let's give everybody a chance to present the evidence and let the community decide initially, is there probable cause to believe that he hid information?
And the community, you're saying, in the form of the grand jury.
Of the grand jury, that's
Yeah,
right.
But we know that that system right now seems to be tainted more favorably for the prosecutor.
Well, it can be, but the instance I'm giving you is that fellow might have gotten a different result if the DA hadn't direct filed. He might have gotten a no bill had he had the chance to present at that time. He certainly wouldn't have been perp walk. There was no reason to directly arrest him there. We knew where we were going to find him.
Okay, that's that lingo that y'all know. What's that perp walk mean?
Perp walk, perpetrator walk, where
Okay.
you put him in cuffs and walk him out on TV.
Got it.
All right, so
I understood it, man.
Ben had been on the street in a while.
I know. Wait. I didn't say I didn't understand it.
Oh, you
it's
wanted
just
everybody
nice. It's just nice to have the explanation of it.
It is.
Right?
It is. It's a translation by lawyers.
And
All right.
everybody out there listening definitely understood it.
So now the grand jury can be used in the other way when the DA says, well, I don't want to make a direct decision here. Let's let the community make it. And so you see that happening on these police shootings where nobody's actually arrested right there on the spot. Nobody's perp walked. Instead, they give that police officer the benefit of going to a grand jury.
Okay, let me ask
Is
you.
it the tool or is it not? And then you see all these grand juries voting basically to say, well, there was no probable cause to believe a police officer in these shootings had probable cause. So it can be used by the grand jury to avoid the hard decision at the time that something happens of making an instantaneous decision.
I like the idea of having the grand jurors randomly selected. I like that idea as opposed to this key man process or individuals simply judges choosing their friends or someone that they know and their friends choosing friends. I like that idea. Let me ask you some other questions because I think the audience will have some questions. In fact, we have callers already wanting to talk with you, but I want to ask you some different questions. How about the treatment of black defendants in Harris County versus the non-black defendants? How do you feel in terms of the administration of justice?
I think that you can look at the results and see that the laws are not always being applied equally. Joe Horn versus this trucker that is charged now with murder of a thief breaking into his truck. I think you got a grand jury saying Mr. Horn was acting in defense of property, that he had the right to do it, and you've got a trucker charged a year after somebody's broken into his truck that he's defended his property against, and you got completely different results. That can happen with small juries. And your question about, is the grand jury the arm of the DA? It isn't supposed to be. That's the point. It isn't supposed to be. It's supposed to be independent. It's supposed to be objective.
So are you saying that in the case of this truck driver, the black truck driver that now used the very weapon that was used against him and his wife,
Yes.
Would you say that as district attorney, that's a case you would not have taken to a grand jury?
I'm suggesting that we need a different way of compiling grand juries. Both those
Yeah,
cases.
but I'm asking a
No, I would
specific
take it. I would take it to the grand
Yes.
jury. But there's a way, remember, the defense lawyer does not get to go into the grand jury. Only the prosecutor goes in. So if you go in, Ben, you know, a strong advocate can affect the
outcome,
opinions
absolutely.
of people. And so where you see these outcomes that appear unfair, you have to ask yourself, did the prosecutor present only a portion of the evidence that was unfavorable to the defendant? In that trucker's example, we read in the newspaper, well, he has a criminal record. Well, a jury wouldn't hear that, not till punishment. It's not relevant to whether he's guilty or not. How is it relevant to probable cause whether he has a criminal record or not? And so I'm afraid that what happens in grand juries is that the district attorney's office is unbridled by a judge. There's nobody there to say, well, that's not fair, or that's only half the story. There's no defense lawyer there. And when you've got grand juries that are predisposed to act one way or the other because they've been picked by law and order judges, I think it leads to absurd results.
What would you have done different? What would you do differently if in the district attorney's office if presented with a case such as the truck driver?
You take it to the grand jury.
You would take it in any event.
Absolutely. Somebody died. All right. So there was a homicide, and the question for the community is it a justified homicide? Was it an intentional killing? Is there probable cause on any of those elements? So I think that the community should look at cases where people die. If it's not clearly an accident, they should. On the other hand, they shouldn't hear prejudicial evidence that a regular jury wouldn't hear. So somebody's past criminal behavior isn't relevant to the question of, is there probable cause to believe this crime happened?
Let me talk about the bankrupting of the community. Once the indictment comes out or comes down, persons have to scramble to try and find money. They start mortgaging their homes, trying to get a defense lawyer to represent them. There is that consequence independent of a determination of innocence or not guilty. They have now burdened their families and themselves. What do you think about in strengthening the public defender's office where people can have able and competent counsel to represent them against the strong arm of government, which is the DA's office?
Well, the bankrupting of justice happens all the time, and sometimes, Ben, it happens before you get to the grand jury. Just being accused of something basically requires you're going to need representation. Now, remember the Ray Rice example, the court of public opinion versus the court of law. The court of public opinion, when they saw that evidence, the tape that's been released, it's a damning tape. We all have seen it. It looks bad. We don't know what his explanation. We don't know what his explanation is, but it's going to have to be something out of the science fiction department to walk in. On the other hand, should that evidence have been released? No, because a jury who hears that case really should be objective, independent, and it's going to be hard to find anybody in America who hadn't seen that tape.
Wow.
Now, when we talk about a person's right to defense, should the public defender's office be expanded, improved, strengthened? We got to have a strong public defender's office for the public to have trust in the justice system. They got to believe that there's a level playing field, that just because you're poor doesn't mean that the government can accuse you of something, run over you, and put you in prison. That's not fair.
What would you as district attorney do to try and increase the public defender's office?
Testify in front of the funding body, Commissioner's Court, and say, not only do we have now a good public defender's office, but I practiced 27 years. I practiced about 23 years before that thing came into existence. So we had some good lawyers that are appointed as defense lawyers by judges. There's absolutely some good lawyers before we had the public defender's office. But now we have an organized, assembled group of defense lawyers that we can hold our government accountable for. Before they were just individually appointed by judges. Now we have a hybrid system.
I have to say, I like what I hear. I really do like this. One other question, and I have to tell the callers, we're going to be right with you before we go to break. Do we have you until 9 o'clock?
Absolutely,
okay,
we do.
Because we got a bunch. We got a bank full of callers for you.
Good.
Okay, let me ask you this: Citizens Review Board with subpoena power as it relates to police shootings. I know that's probably not in the district attorney's office, but what's your view on that issue?
My view is that people have lost faith and trust in the justice system, and therefore the demand for a board, a commission, a review panel, if you will, of our peers is being driven by that lack of trust, by the belief that the system is rigged against certain communities. I think the African American community absolutely feels that way. And so that's where the demand for the Citizens Review Board is coming. I think if we reformed grand juries and we had anonymous, random grand juries that came out with results that were more reflective of what the community's beliefs are, that you might hear a dimming of that cry for an independent review board with subpoena powers.
But
That's where it's coming from.
would you support the concept?
Until we get a fair grand jury system, I would.
All right, let's take some callers. Unless Al, you have a
Well, been researching Kim, and one of the things that I found particularly interesting was your concept of clean and green. Now, I'd like for you to tell our listeners what that means, because the concept of it on the surface, Ben, could be that this might be a little bit of institutionalized slavery. But
okay.
But talk about that. That's
All right. When we're talking about justice resources, we know we got a limited dollar. And if we jail everybody, it's the most expensive way of punishing them for a violation of the law.
Right.
I'd like to see people have the option in nonviolent crimes like possession of marijuana to avoid jail and simply repay our community with a few hours of community service. They're hard hours. I propose cleaning the bio. Why do I do that? Well, it's away from schools, churches, the highways, so it's safe for the offender. We have bios that used to be beautiful, now they're filthy. They act as our garbage bins because everything that goes down the drain goes in the bio.
Yeah.
So I like to kayak. I'm an outdoors girl. I want pretty bios. I like to ride my bike on those trails. I think a lot of people do. If we gave offenders the opportunity to pay back our community instead of sit in jail at our expense, if we could get a value, then the idea that the law's been broken is satisfied because the offender's accountable, but the community's repaid. So that's clean and green, and I'm not proposing a new law, I'm just proposing a new lawyer to enforce the law.
I have to tell you, that sounds like a part of my last campaign speech, but I appreciate it. All right, let's take a caller. Caller, you're on the air. Hello, you're on the air. Good morning. Sure, the answer is
Yeah,
yes, but I want to
that's
have
a
Kim do
good
it.
question, Ben. Our listener's saying, hey, does a accused have a right to tell his side of the story? You bet you do, but if you've ever heard of the Fifth Amendment, you also have the right not to incriminate yourself. The problem with going in front of a grand jury is they hear your story, but after it's done, there's nobody to stand up and object if the prosecutor asks you questions about things that shouldn't be in front of that grand jury, like your past criminal record. That wouldn't come in before a regular jury. Without that advocate defending you, you're on your own. And you may say things that then later can be used against you if you're in fact true-billed or found to they're found to be probable cause that you committed the crime. So most lawyers really take that decision about whether to send their client into that grand jury unaccompanied, undefended, very seriously. And so when a regular person makes that decision, you just don't have the benefit of all the trials and all the tribulations that the lawyers may have had in knowing that if you go in there, you go in at your own risk.
Sure, that can be used against you later in the prosecution. Can he, as opposed to the defendant going in or the accused going in, can they have the lawyer go in and talk to the grand jury?
Nope, that's part of the unfairness, I think, of the grand jury. Now,
All right.
again, that ain't going to be changed just by changing the way that we pick grand jurors. But I think if we pick people who are more interested in both sides of the story before they come out with a decision that forever changes a suspect's life by making them hire a lawyer, making them be accused in the court of public opinion formally, that perhaps we can avoid some of those problems.